Hey Neppers, it's me, Wild Neptune. Today, I want to talk about equipment score. What is it, how to use it, and how you can use it so you can get the best gear possible and the best builds possible. Before all that though, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscription on this video as it does help out the channel quite a bit. We just hit 500 subs, so thank you so much for all the support. Now, let's go. Now, what is equipment score? Equipment score is simply an in-game numerical metric on how efficiently a piece of gear has rolled its substats. The higher, the better. It is very similar to another metric that players have used for a long time, even before the in-game system came out, called gear score. To get your gear score, you simply subtract between 25 or 26 from your equipment score to get your gear score. To not confuse people, I will only be talking about equipment score for this video. I do have a video based for Fribbles and how to use that, which will use more gear score, but to keep it simple, I will only be using the in-game metric from here on out. To see your equipment score in-game, you can either go to a piece of gear on a hero, and you can look at it this way, right below the substats, or you can go to your inventory, and you can actually sort by equipment score if you want to, from highest to lowest, or from lowest to highest. You can also show it on the overview, like here. I like to have it on by default, because it's a little easier and simpler for me this way, just to see all the pieces right here. Typically, your I-90 and your I-88 pieces that roll like I-90s will have equipment scores between 80 at the low end and up to, say, even 110 if you are extremely lucky. It can theoretically go below 80, however, it is very, very difficult to justify using very low rolled pieces. And yes, it can even go, say, above something like 107, 108, again to 110, but those are basically perfectly rolled pieces of gear with an included 5-speed roll, something that you might never actually see for as long as you play the game. A quick metric that players have used for equipment score is 95 to 96 is the baseline for a good piece of gear. This is not a hard and fast rule, just a little guideline that players like to use to save them some time. This only applies for pieces of gear that are I-90 and have either 4 percentage substats, like this piece right here, as it has attack percentage, crit chance, crit damage, and health percentage, or 3 percentage stats and speed, like this one, as it has crit damage, health percentage, crit chance, and it also has speed. This also applies to, again, 88 pieces that roll like I-90 pieces. Of course, you still also want to have actual good substats too. Like this counter piece is a nice 96 equipment score, and it has, you see here, 3 good percentage stats and speed. However, this destruction set piece here, even though it does have the exact same gear score, the substats are a little weirder and can be harder to use, so might not have actually been a worthy reforge, and why this is reforged in this case, I don't actually know. Keep in mind that there are exceptions to these rules, and they're not actual rules, just guidelines for you to follow on determining if you want to use the piece of gear or not. Remember that good common sense and cohesive substats is what matters the most when you start out. Now, let's look at some different units and see how they have different equipment scores based on their overall needs, starting with Abyssal Yuphiin. Abyssal Yuphiin is a character that requires either to have 4 percentage substats or 3 percentage substats and speed. As see here, this means that every single piece of gear that she has will have relatively high equipment score. She's one of the units where the 95 to 96 average per piece applies in determining if a piece of gear is good or not. A Soul Weaver that can use the same metric would be Ocean Breeze Luluca. And she also wants to have 4 percentage subs or 3 percentage subs and speed. Of course, as a Soul Weaver, the substats she wants are going to be different, but the same thing still applies, where the 95 to 96 average is still good. This also applies to other Soul Weavers too, like say Destina, and to most non-cleave DPS units and the like also. Next, let's look at some units that don't need to have full percentage subs on all of their pieces, starting with Jacko. So, you see right here, these pieces here do have full percentage and it does have the speed. However, on the right side, it's a little bit different. Because you cannot get the same substat as the main stat, and you'll have damage substats or speed on your right side, you will lose out on one of those important subs and you will have to fill it in with something else. This is where the flat stat comes in. On this neck piece, not a great neck piece, it does have though the flat attack, which is the best 4th subset to have because it's the only one that adds to your damage for a piece like this. Same thing with this ring, has a flat attack. As soon as I change his health to speed, it'll be a pretty nice piece for this unit. And finally, because I can get speed as a sub, since it is my main stat, the flat attack is indeed the best substat to have as my final option. Now, it would be better if I rolled a little bit less into those flat subs, but you cannot always get everything that you want. Keep in mind too, that because of this, your equipment score on your pieces like this will be lower than your 95 to 96 you might be looking for those full percentage roll pieces of gear. However, that does not mean that the piece is unusable or even necessarily worse than those pieces, because in this case, a piece like this that has the flat attack is actually much better for this unit than a piece that's maybe, let's say, had defense on it, because I don't care about defense when I'm just aiming to kill something. Another unit like this is Let's Ride a Crowd. You'll notice here that on the helmet and on the chest piece, I do have my 3% subs and speed. However, this neck piece does have some flat health, the ring has a flat defense, and the boost of flat defense too, because flat health or flat defense is the best final sub for this unit. On this weapon too, I can actually change this attack percentage to flat health. And even though I would take a equipment score hit, probably dropping to 94 or so, it is actually better for me to do this for this unit because he benefits much more from a little small 250 health boost than he does from 7% attack. Of course, there's some units that can get away with having some flat stats. Keep in mind that units like Jacko, the best 4th sub to have in those cases was the flat attack. Like on Dilibet here, this ring, because it already has defense percentage as a main stat, having flat defense here is not that bad. Crit damage would also have been very nice also. But this helmet here, it has defense percentage, crit damage, speed, and flat defense, which is a perfectly usable 4th substat for a defense scaler like Design Lilibet to get more defense. Now, with having another roll into defense percentage and changing this flat defense to health percentage probably better? Yes, it probably would be. However, it does not mean that this piece is unusable, just that it is very specific to a unit like this. Another unit like this is going to be Karina. Again, this is mostly going to be applied to units that want to have defense or health as a 4th substat sometimes. So, in this case, my Karina's Necklace does have some flat defense on it, and therefore the equipment score is going to be lower. However, for this build and for this unit, it is actually a very, very good piece. Units too, like Soul Weavers, like say Maid Chloe. Some of the pieces you're going to want to have some either flat defense or some flat health on them, because you really can't make use of other pieces of equipment or substats in those cases, and your equipment score will suffer because of that. I say that, and I'm looking at this gear here, and I'm realizing that even with these flat subs, they are really good pieces of gear, but you get the point that if they were percentage subs, the equipment score would be even higher. Then we have units that actively want to search for maybe having flat stats in their subs, like maybe Dark Corvus here. So let's go to Dark Corvus and let's sort by speed and resist here and go to health, but you also want some flat health too, both of them, right? So we're looking right here, see what we have. We're not going to equip anything right now, but we'll do right here. So we have some health and flat health right here too. Let's see what we have here. We have some health and flat health, some health and flat health right here. So let's do that right there. On this right here, I'll do health and have any flat health here. We have some right there. That's pretty nice here. We have the resist set right now set up. So let's remove that and now go for speed with health and flat health right here. Well, there we go. Now what about here? We actually have some health and flat health here. Well, this one's not reforged, so let's look at... this one's okay. Let's put it on right now. We're not going to change gear or anything. And finally, right here, because the helmet has health as a main stat, we can't get flat health, so we'll just do max health, and boom. So this is what we have right now. Is this a good build overall? Not really. The ER is a little bit lower than you want it to be, so we'll probably have to sacrifice some stats somewhere, probably in speed, and maybe a tiny bit of health here in order to get this up to snuff. But as you saw, all we did here was we searched for both health and flat health on all the pieces to get this little baseline for something that is usable, I would say. And these pieces, the overall equipment score on them is pretty low actually, but because Dark Corvus benefits so much from having health, getting flat health stacked onto him is going to be very, very good if you can combine it with already high percentage health rolls or your percentage health main stat. Remember, even though having high equipment score looks nice and can make you feel good, it's not always going to be the best thing ever. Look at this boot right here. Now, this boot is the lowest equipment score boot that I'm currently using on a unit that I use for PvP sometimes on Rowana. 80 equipment score is very, very low. It is, remember, 15 to 16 points below the baseline that people use. And it is so low because it has a lot of flat health. Now, would this be better if it had less flat health and more, say, defense percentage or even ER? Probably yes. However, it does not mean it's unusable, because Rowana really likes having a lot of health, and other units do too. Like on Dark Corvus, if it's okay with maybe having a 170, 180 speed instead, this would actually probably be a pretty good boot on him also. So just because the equipment score is low, it doesn't mean that the piece of gear is worthless. However, of course, there are limits to these things, as 80 is still on the very, very, very low end, and you're probably only going to have very niche applications with pieces of gear like this. Keep in mind too though, that even a piece that's really high equipment score doesn't always mean it's going to be usable right away or at all. Take this chest piece right here. Lifesteal piece from the Abyss with a whoppingly huge 104 equipment score, which is very high. However, 26% of it is in effectiveness. And for a very long time, this piece of gear was totally worthless because there were no units that wanted lifesteal and effectiveness at the same time. Of course, this was until very, very recently with Rift, when a lot of units suddenly wanted to have effectiveness with lifesteal, and now it does have a life of its own and can actually be used in the game. However, for years, this is a piece of gear you just tossed on to inflate your combat power for a world boss or for PvE or something like that. Nothing very important like, say, farming your rift every single day. And that's really all we have. Remember that equipment score is just a tool, a guide you can use. It is not a replacement for good play and smart thinking. Also, knowing if a piece is going to be good even if it already has high equipment score. Remember that I will have a video on Fribbles coming out probably in the next week or two. So be ready for that, for some more detailed analysis in gearing and overall builds also. Anyway, I'm Wild Neptune. It's been a good one. Nep out.